Hi, welcome to the video. So basically I did a video over a year ago now on imposter syndrome, on anxiety. Anyway, I feel like putting that video out there actually was like the fire put under me to work on them. The goal of this video is to either empower you to work on things that maybe you've been putting off, to help alleviate symptoms of fear, anxiety, feeling stuck. So just to kind of give you an overview in this video, I'm going to talk about anxiety. I'm going to talk about relationship struggles. We're going to get into negative self-talk, imposter syndrome, not feeling like you belong, and even weight gain and body image. Anyway, if this is your cup of tea, grab a cup of tea and let's get to chatting. Okay, so I basically wrote down 3 things that I really wanted to manage/fix. One was my health, my hormone imbalance. The other was my inner confidence. And I mean true inner confidence. I think we can all put on confidence for a day, for our work, for whatever. But I mean true confidence. Like I wake up and I fucking love myself. That type of confidence. And lastly, my relationship with people, my husband specifically, but my relationships. I wanted to fix them. All right, let's start with the first one, which was health. And I felt like in the last 10 years, it'd been all over the place. And I knew that I had a hormonal imbalance. And with my hormone imbalance, especially after becoming a mom, one of the biggest things was I began to sweat. A little backstory, I've never been a sweater. And that sounds so weird. And I always hate saying that to people because it sounds like I'm like superior. I just really didn't until pregnancy or until I became a mom. And at first I thought, this is just my body's going through a lot of changes. And then it was like, oh, I've been nursing for 7 months. Probably has to do with that. And then I stopped nursing and I continued to sweat. But I was like, oh, this is an issue I must deal with. In my 30s, new to deodorant and not knowing where to start, I probably bought every single deodorant under the sun, trying to find something that worked and that I liked. And finally, it's led me to try Lumi, which is a sponsor of today's video. And I'm sure you've all heard of Lumi. It's a deodorant that's not just for your underarms. You can use it anywhere and everywhere. Lumi deodorant was developed by an OBGYN, Shannon Klingman, and I'm so thankful that she has developed a product that can just bring you a tremendous amount of confidence, and I'm so glad to have found something that actually works. Lumi will not stain your clothes, and it comes in 8 different scents. But my absolute favorite is the invisible spray in the soft powder. It's clean and it doesn't compete with your perfume or fragrance that you wear. Lumi is clinically proven to block body odor all day and continues to do so for 72 hours. Lumi stops odor before it starts, is skin safe, baking soda free, cruelty free, vegan, and pH optimized to use anywhere on your body. The Lumi Starter Pack is a great deal for new customers looking to try out their wide range of products. It comes with a full-size stick deodorant, a cream deodorant tube or spray, with 2 free products like the wipes or mini body wash with free US shipping. And for my followers, Lumi is offering an extra $5 off when you click the link in the description below. Enter code Ellebangs at checkout, and that's a deal of over 40% off. Thank you, Lumi, for sponsoring a portion of today's video. I left a link in the description box for more info. And so while we're on health, another symptom I have been dealing with for basically as long as I could remember is like hypoglycemia and just my blood sugar just being all over the place. And I remember probably about 10 years ago, I read this book on eating for your blood type. And I remember it sounding so restrictive and something I couldn't do. And I just kind of blocked it off. And after giving birth and hanging on to those last 10 pounds, and no matter what I did, I just couldn't lose the weight. And at one point I just thought, well, like I'm a mom, I'm in my 30s, maybe this is it. Maybe this is just where my body wants to be. But one thing I kept coming back to is like, I've always done the same thing and expected different results. But I went back to learning about eating for your blood type and I was like, let me just give that a try. And again, main thing was eat a ton of red meat, limit grains, and I was like, cool. So like paleo or keto, which is something I just will never commit to for many reasons. But the more I read into it, the more I realized, okay, there is flexibility. It just means you're limiting grains. And I was like, why don't I start that? Down this rabbit hole, I felt like everything I read was always incorporate more protein for longevity so that you can age better, so that you can not lose muscle. And so I was like, you know what? This is something I've never tried. So let me try this. And normally I would try to do too many things at once. I would try a new workout routine plus trying to eat different. And basically my focus was, how can I get more protein into my day? So instead of thinking, let me just eliminate all carbs or eliminate grains, it was like, how can I incorporate just more of the things I'm supposed to eat without focusing so much on what I'm not supposed to eat? Somehow that shift in my brain was what I needed. I realized that for the last 10, 15 years, I've just been, when it came to food, I was just like living in this like restrictive, like less calories, less of this, don't touch bread, don't whatever. And did I do this long term? Of course not, because it's not sustainable. So I just thought about, how can I incorporate more? How can I nourish my body more? So it was about that. It was about giving my body. And I know, like, if you had asked me 10 years ago, yes, that's what I would have said I wanted to do, but it wasn't what I was doing. So being that I'm a work from home mom, I started making like just good, wholesome soups every week. And I was like, if I'm changing one meal a day. So I would make rich bone broth soups with a ton of vegetables and no grains. My breakfast stay the same, my dinner stay the same, but for lunch and this is typically the chaotic part of my day. I would be watching Amelia, I would be trying to answer an email, I'd be trying to like get on a Zoom meeting, and it was just like eating was like my last priority. And then what would I reach for? Carbs, and easiest thing that I can stuff in my mouth, honestly. So at least I had something healthy to go to. And not only did this save me time, it saved me worry. And it was just like, it was an easy switch in my day. I also started learning more about chi in the body and warming foods if you're like wanting to heal. And all of this just sounded so appealing, especially after you have a baby. You're just all about nurturing someone else but yourself. So this was just like my little like self-care thing that I did for myself every day. And I didn't have to cook it every day. So I would cook it like on Monday and I would have it for like 4 days. And because of the ease of it, I was able to stick to it. So that was one thing. Then I was like, okay, well, if I'm doing that, how can I switch up my breakfast? And so I learned to break my fast, which is what your breakfast is, with protein. So I would start typically with toast or a bagel or oatmeal, all grains. And so doing that really started my day off where I wasn't already on this blood sugar roller coaster. So breaking my fast, not with coffee. That was another big one. We switched off the coffee. I do lemon water, and then I have a protein-rich breakfast, whatever that is. It can be sausage, it can be eggs, it can be whatever I have around. Then for lunch, I would have the soup. And then for dinner, I ate what we decided to eat together as a family. And that alone, I stuck to that for a year, and I've lost, I think, almost 17 pounds with just a little over a year. And again, I think the reason why it was such a big switch or such a big mind shift was because I was not restricting. So again, I think if you take one thing away from this section of the video is I'm not a nutritionist, but I feel like when it comes to nutrition, there's so much information and it's sometimes contradicts itself and it's so confusing. And unless you dedicate your entire life to figuring out what you're supposed to do, I feel like it's impossible. So I think one of the best ways is there's a lot of like tests out there where you can test and see what your body needs, but really evaluate what your body is and like what it needs, because I think that's the key, or at least it was for me. I was doing a traditional healthy diet, but it wasn't right for my body type. Sure, I did want to lose the weight, but I don't feel like I honestly eat so much more now than I did before. I can 100% honestly say that. And I would hear, people that would work out or whatever and say that. And I used to be like, yeah, right. Absolutely not. But again, because I nourish my body and because my body is actually fueled with good protein, I'm no longer hungry. Like I'm not, or not no longer hungry. I no longer have cravings and I no longer need to be a snacker, which all that adds up. And especially if you're already eating a high grain diet, everything that you kind of pile on is like extra. Whereas now instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat this, if I'm eating, say for dinner, we're having creamy mashed potatoes, I'm like, how can I balance this with a good quality protein instead of I'm not going to touch the mashed potatoes. And then when I add, so again, it's always about what else can I add? And it's just, I feel fulfilled. And obviously the confidence of two things, the confidence of getting the weight off and feeling like I'm actually back to my normal self before baby, but also the confidence it's given me in that I did it. I did this for a year. It just worked. And I've found something that works and that helps. So, which leads me into my other category, which is deep self-confidence and avoiding negative self-talk and imposter syndrome. So when I started on YouTube, as you guys know, Adam, my husband, is still in advertising, and he's the one that really pushed me to be consistent on YouTube and really helped with all the things that I knew nothing about. So camera gear, angles, lighting, like all those things. And we were a team. Anyway, as with any relationship and any business, it evolves, it changes. Our roles slightly changed and differed, and I don't think I evolved with them. And resentment was built on the relationship. Worse than anything was the negative self-talk I had on myself and how I just told myself I can't do this and I'm not good at this. And when it's your main career, it's not a nice way to handle your business and to continue. And so I knew I had to switch, and I would always envision this dream life scenario. I would have this amazing morning routine and blah, blah, blah. And I would eat a certain way, and I would, be this energy that I wanted to be for the world and for everyone around me. And I realized the imposter syndrome. I was telling myself that I couldn't do XYZ in my work. But what I realized, like this insecurity came much deeper. So I really had to look in the mirror, look at myself, and like really analyze, like, what is off? Like, what am I not living authentically, with? What am I? And what I realized was my idea of the perfect Sylvia I wanted to be versus the Sylvia I was living were two completely different people. And so again, my shift there was, how can I live in that way? And again, my diet was one of them. The other one was my morning routine. Mornings are so important to me. It is my absolute favorite part of the day. But for the last 10, 15 years, it didn't matter if it was a Sunday and I had nothing to do, or it was a Wednesday and I had a jam-packed day. I hated getting out of bed. And for the longest time, I thought I was like super depressed. Like I didn't like my life and I didn't want to wake up to it. I know that sounds like deep and really negative, but that's how I operated for over 10 years. And nothing could get me to wake up earlier because I just always felt sleep deprived. And I just had this vision of waking up refreshed and having a morning routine. And that was just it seemed like so far off of what I could achieve that it started to become really scary. And I realized that to me, that was one of the biggest sources of my insecurity. Like I somehow put in my head that that's who I want to be. And it wasn't aligned with what I was doing. And one time I was like, I'm going to do it. Tomorrow, I'm waking up at 6 a.m. and I set my alarm and I snoozed that biatch 10 times and woke up at the same time I always did, or got up at the same time. And that day was actually like worse than any of the other mornings I had because now I also tried something new and I failed. So awful. I felt awful for a week, and it was just in my mind, it was like, this is the proof that I cannot be this person that I have dreamt of being. And then I started reading, and it is my absolute most favorite thing. Started reading, and I felt like the more I learned, it didn't feel like someone was telling me to do something. It felt like I was teaching myself, which I know books are written by other really smart people, but I don't know, like it's like a book will speak to me so much more than someone telling me facts. I don't know why, but it works for me. And finally I was like, what's going to get me out of bed in the morning? First thing I realized, well, it doesn't start in the morning. It starts, what's making me not wake up in the morning? Well, because I was tired. I didn't have enough sleep. Well, I was going to bed at 2 or 3 a.m. So of course I was not going to get up at 6 a.m. and feel happy about it. So I realized what I need to change is my nighttime routine if I want to have this glorious morning routine. So with much hesitation from family living, it's not just my schedule. My schedule, if I want to change my schedule, it kind of has to, my whole family schedule kind of has to change and evolve with me, and that's not easy to do. But thankfully, after many weeks, my husband was on board, and we finally were able to have a rule of turn the light off at midnight, 12:30 the latest, so that I get 8 hours of sleep and wake up at 8 a.m. And then still, when that 8 a.m. alarm clock rang, I'm not saying that I was excited to get out of bed, but I was like, okay, now the next step, I can actually open my eyes and not want to just crawl into a hole and disappear. Now, what can I do in the morning that keeps this going? And that was the challenging part. And the first time I woke up and I meditated and worked out, and I was like, now what? This is not going to get me out of bed tomorrow. And then I was like, well, what if I start with something that's really fun for me? Obviously, the workout has benefits later, but I don't think anyone is excited for that initial starting to work out period. So I was like, well, reading brings me a lot of joy. Why don't I start with reading? And that was it. The next day, I did that, and I really recorded how that felt. And the next morning, I wanted to get up to do that again. And it's almost like this race of trying to get that morning routine before my toddler wakes up. And that I can genuinely say that in the last year, I have had joy to wake up to. And when I became a mom, there was an added level of guilt because I'm like, how am I not like super excited to just wake up and be with my child? Like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me as a mom? So for the first time, I was excited to wake up. And I'm not saying that I didn't have other secondary thoughts of, well, this is silly because I'm getting up to read. Like, how is this helping my day? And how is this productive? And there's a million other things that need my attention, and how selfish of me. And I definitely had to battle those thoughts in order, and have faith in that this is making me feel so good. I choose to feel good. And then I realized that when I had an amazing routine, I was more at ease with my toddler, I was more at ease with my husband, and I had more bandwidth to just deal with work issues and life issues. And so that's where I truly started to see the value in it and not just the joy of it. And when I started to see that, it was like, okay, I can do this for myself, and I can do it long term. And anything that I do that I feel like is not long term, I typically will just give up. So I could stick to this new eating habit. I could stick to this new morning routine. And then finally one day I realized, I was like, I'm becoming that girl that I've always wanted to be. And that is what I feel like gave me this confidence to, I can do anything, and I can be the mom I want to be, and I can show up in my business the way I want to. And it gave me this confidence that I feel like maybe I've never, ever felt. And I know that this can be obviously different for everyone, but I think one of the biggest things was the inauthenticity of the life I was living. I think that just sleeping till the absolute last minute, it was just, first of all, terrible way to to wake up to. There's a podcast that I listened to also that I think it's the first 45 minutes from the moment you wake up. Those first 45 minutes, you're not fully awake. So every emotion you have in those 45 minutes kind of gets embedded into, I'm really miswording this, but it gets like embedded into your DNA, which then becomes like who you are for that day. And who you are for that day is who you are for the next and the next and the next. So super hard to break cycles, but basically those first 45 minutes of being awake. So whether you're staying in bed, whether you're getting up and yelling at your toddler to get out the door, to go to preschool, whatever, that is the tone. That's who you are for the day. And I realized like I hated waking up. I hated my morning routine. And even though I felt like sometimes I could go off to have a good day, those first 45 minutes were just, it took so much out of me to become a human and live life. And I used to think like, I'm just not a morning person. Turns out I am. I just think I was living so off of who I guess deep down I knew I was. And if you take anything away from this video, I would have you take stock of what that is. Who is the dream you, and like what are you doing differently, and start working on one thing at a time. I do have to preface this by saying this is in no way trying to sound like I've got it all figured out or like my life is perfect. Issues still arise. I still have bad mornings. I still have days where I don't want to wake up, but they're minimal and I can snap out of it. And the next day I can get back onto my good routine. And that's like another thing too. The first time that I didn't read in the morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. I'm like back to my old ways. No, because you've done it and you've proven to yourself that you have done it. And I think there's so much power in that. And I think for anyone watching, whether or not you're a mom, I think just becoming a mom just throws everything off its access. It's whatever you were on. So if for me, it already wasn't in a perfect place, I think, before I became a mom. And then throwing that kind of schedule disruption into my daily life just made it that much worse. And I get that sometimes like maybe our ideal self is a really big challenge, or your dream is to own a big company or a big brand or what. And I know that that's not something you just create overnight and the next morning you start living it. But this sounds so cheesy, but it's like, it's the journey, not the destination. But the second you do one thing that you're really proud of, like the first time I woke up before 8 a.m., the first time that I actually found joy in that morning routine, I was so ecstatic, and that gave me so much energy to continue going anytime, and I try to remind myself of this in so many areas of life, but it's like, whether it's like losing weight, and you're like, once I lose the 20 pounds, I'll be happy, but no, it's actually like that first week of you doing something better for your body is going to feel so good. You don't have to reach that full destination to really start reaping the benefits. You start reaping them so much earlier. And that's, I think, what I really try to remind myself of often in so many areas of life. I think another big lesson I've learned, and this is more recently actually, is I'll learn a skill. Like I wanted to stop my negative self-talk. And that was really, really, really hard for me. So finally, the first step was acknowledging that I was doing it. I was doing it at least 10 times a day. Like, oh my gosh, like my child is not having her nap on time. I'm just terrible with time. Oh, I did it again. How can we rephrase that? Oh, tomorrow I would like to, have my toddler on a better sleep schedule. Tomorrow, maybe half an hour before it's sleep time or nap time, I'm going to start winding down and have a plan. So much easier. And that's actually going to get me results tomorrow as opposed to the negative self-talk. So first of all, it was recognizing it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I do this so much more often than I even thought I did. which then made me, I need to start loving myself more and not do this because it's not helping anyone. So then I thought, okay, I've got that kind of handled. But what I realized is that negative self-talk also happened in other areas. Like, say my husband did something that wasn't aligned with our schedules or wasn't helpful to me or Amelia. And I would have then that same negative self-talk that I would have for myself, but for him. And I thought, well, I'm not negative self-talking, so I'm doing great. Nope, because that actually didn't make me feel good either. So I think sometimes I think like, oh, I've really learned this lesson and I've learned it well and I've incorporated it into my life for months and months. And like, I feel like I really got it down. But sometimes then I come to realize that, oh, it's still affecting another area in a different way. So I'm just more into keeping my eyes open and more observant rather than like thinking that I have to just execute all the time. Sometimes it's really just about stepping back and witnessing. What am I doing? What are my behaviors? Is this behavior suiting me? Is it suiting the situation? Is it bettering the situation? And again, instead of knocking yourself down for having that behavior, just how can I switch that up so that it suits me and this whole operation better? That's been a big one for me because I think we all can get set in our ways and it's hard to switch it up and change. All right, which brings us into the last section I really wanted to talk about, and that is relationships. And like I said, specifically like my relationship with my husband, but it translated into the relationship with my parents, with friends, all of it. And I think one of the books that I read that really, really helped me in this category was a book on human design. If you know nothing about human design, my sister-in-law actually introduced me to it. And it's basically like we all have a specific design, and I think there's 4 or 5 types. And basically it looked like a Bible. And at first when I was like, oh, this is like one of those books you like get out and read a chapter here and there. Anyway, I ended up reading it from like beginning to end, and it's not undoable by any means, but it was so eye-opening to me. And at first I kind of rejected it because I was like, nope, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. Nope, you are not putting me in that box. That is not who I want to be. So, and the more I read into this book, the more I realized just so many stories that I told myself. Like, I am this because of this, or my parents did this and this is why I'm like this, and whatever. Just all these biases and these just stories we tell ourselves that I didn't realize it. It's so easy to just think, well, these are facts. These did happen, so this is why I'm like this. But I think in this book, the author doesn't know me, doesn't know anything that happened to me, and everything this book outlined was who I was. So it was eye-opening in that, oh, I thought I was like this because of this situation. And I thought I was like this because of the time I got married. And I thought I was all these things that I think we can tell ourselves. And for me, the biggest thing was, it's maybe that wasn't the root cause. Maybe this is just who I am. And that alone has given me so much liberty and freedom that I suggest you learn about your human design and reading the book on your type. But overall, nourishing my body, reading. The confidence I get from the new knowledge that I have is also really exciting. So I can't recommend reading enough. And the fact that I truly think that you can find your favorite categories and just become a reader. And I hate telling someone like, become this because it's really worked for me. But I think reading honestly was like kind of the starting point of how everything kind of started to shift for me. So I guess I will always have a special place for it just in my heart, and will recommend it always. But I have to say that I was not a reader. I think I read a fact not long ago that I think it's like over 38% of Americans do not read another book after high school. And that is astounding to me. And although I was almost one of those people, I'd probably read like 5 books, 10 books since high school. And that's still absolutely really, really low. My point is, I didn't think I was a reader. Also, I used to always just tell myself, like, I can't concentrate. I start reading and I feel like the information is like going in one ear and out the other. That's because I wasn't interested in what I was reading. That's the only thing I can think of. And it's not about, I'm really into self-help books, but that's like, those to me are page turners. And so whatever it is for you, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's like just literature or fiction, or, you know, even if you're reading for fun and you're not necessarily like learning, you're still learning. That's the key here. But yeah, I just feel like it's benefited me in so many categories of life that if you someone that has been telling yourself that story, I'm just not a reader, or I don't grasp information and all these things that I told myself before, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, have you read this book? So again, don't put yourself in a box. You'll surprise yourself. And I think that's one thing that I've learned with age, and this is why getting older can get better if you allow it. Anyway, with that being said, I will link the books that I've read that I feel like have made an impact if you are stuck and don't know where to start. And yeah, I encourage you to live your best life and to live authentically to what feels is your dream person in your dream life. Again, I still have many struggles and many challenges, and I'm still learning every day. So I don't want this video in any way to come off like I've got it all figured out. But I feel like what I did was learn a lot of things that maybe a lot of people over 10 years learn, and I really jam-packed it into a year. And I don't know if it was the fact of like becoming a mom that I was like, we got to get on with this. We got to become a better person. But I just feel like if I can do it, so can you. So anyway, I hope this is your year. I'm wishing you a year full of abundance and joy, and anything that you've told yourself you couldn't do, I hope that this is the year you realize that's not true. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, please leave a yellow heart emoji down below. I love you. You're like my true ride or dies. And again, if you want more info on Lumi, thanks again to them for sponsoring a portion of today's video. I will leave all that information in the description. And also just a quick reminder, I am going to be uploading my beauty masterclass here on YouTube. Finally realized I just want to share it with you all, and I'm going to start. And so the next upload here on YouTube will be the start of that masterclass. And I'm going to be uploading each chapter or each episode in order. So there's not going to be an interruption of other content. You will have that masterclass for you at your disposal whenever you want to go back and watch it. So anyway, I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.